Hello? There we go. Looks like we got it. Okay, let's try that again. Apologies for that. I'm not sure why, but microphone decided that it was not going to feed audio through after I tested a little bit earlier. Yeah, sorry about that. I am running a royalty-free playlist. As I just mentioned, I don't know why. Like, I literally tested before this, my mic was coming through fine. Although I did adjust the mic, like, physical location, so that might have been it. After I tested if it was working. I don't know why that would. The OBS disconnected the feed is what was going on. And so I had to change to one of my other input devices in the back. But as I was mentioning before, tackled shaders. First time doing those. Tackled AI. Navigation, player vision cones, player tracking, state machines for threat detection and fall off, all that stuff. Stuff we'd never done in a game before. And then lastly, lighting. I created the Fog of War through lighting. It worked out surprisingly well. We introduced shadows as well. I fiddled around a little bit with trying to do some lighting for how the vision works. I wasn't happy with it. And so it's not in the game build. Sorry, when I say how the vision works, I mean, I wanted to highlight the vision cones from our AI. I wanted to showcase where their vision area is, so you know where to avoid and stuff like that. But I wanted it to be bound behind the Fog of War. And I couldn't come up with a way to do this that wasn't just drawing another rectangle, and then it ran into its own issues on the other side. And so it didn't make it in, unfortunately, but that's one of the things that we still don't work on. I also didn't get to procedural generation, although I did do pretty much all the setup needed to be able to do that. The tiles themselves in code are navigation meshes. Hello, Riven Main. Welcome. Which means that since we have the tile sets reference IDs, and it includes all of the collision and navigation mesh information as well as lighting, so I can encode our lighting map for like shadows and stuff. Yep. Since I can encode all of that into our tile sets and I can get IDs for our tiles, I can paint tile maps through code, which is all that's required for us to do procedural generation. So I want to use what I learned on how to do this navigational stuff on future game jams, so that we can create procedural maps and do that. I didn't get to any of the main menus. We've done menus before, so I wasn't too concerned about that. Same goes for sound effects and music. I haven't incorporated sound effects or music into I've included sound effects. I haven't included music into a Godot game before. So I was kind of hoping to get to this, but again, it was kind of low on the priority list. The most important thing was getting something functional. It needs content is the problem at the end of the day. And then, of course, as I mentioned here, visualizing progress towards detection on the vision cones. This was one of the things I was fighting with at the end, but I ran out of time. So we'll boot it up. Yeah, it definitely needed quite a bit of that. Let me see if I can. I don't think I can full screen this without full screen it. So let me switch to my gaming scene. Oh, looks like I didn't add the button for it. So give me 1 second. There's the full screen button. All right, so we can control our player, arrow keys, or WASD. Shift to sprint. We saw this before. Control to crouch. That doesn't really do anything. I swapped the player model for the other sprite, and then I changed the enemies to be the knights. They have attack animations, and you have a death animation now, which immediately restarts. You can see we've got vision cones lined up. It took me a little while to get the smoothing working correctly with the shader we built. If you touch the guys, well, of course it's not working now. Oh, there it goes. So, oh, it looks like ads triggered on Twitch, so I'll give that a moment. But if you run through their main vision area, oh, I got too close. If you run through their main vision area, they will start tracking you. Since we don't have vision cones displayed, it's a little bit harder to see. But we progress through multiple tiers of tracking. Oh, we're waiting on ads. Is that the right one? It was. All right. All right. Got it. So ads should be over for Twitch now as well, if I'm not mistaken. I switched over to the actual local build, and I enabled collision, so you can see the detection areas. This is kind of what I was going for. So you can see the distinction between their primary and secondary, which is really, really hard to visualize in so getting this to visualize properly at all was a bit of a struggle. This is through the debugger, and so you can see all their cones, but you can get the idea of what I was kind of going for here was having the different cone options, and so you can visualize it. You can see they will return to their guard post and then rotate around. If you trip their vision and you leave their line of sight, they will wander over to your last known location, and then once they're there, they should start searching the area. This is hard to visualize without the vision cones, you know what I mean? He should be rotating around, but he's not. Oh, I was still tweaking numbers on this one, so he's probably just going to look one way, and then his other timer will trip and move him back. But I wanted it to be to where their vision cone would spread, like you'd have a sliver on either side around this post. I also wanted to introduce, you can see I actually have a little bit of texture on the floor here now too. Sadly, you can only see it when their vision cone overlaps it. But I needed to work on there it goes. This should be quicker when they're in the search phase like this than when they're in their standard guard post phases. So you can see this, they do the exact same thing in these two. And then of course we do have if you touch them, they will kill you. Oh, I got too close. Let me turn off. So turn that debugging back off. So if we sneak past these guys, if you run up and touch you. If I touch you, it alerts them. It has a small delay on how I'm doing it, and I need to button that up a little bit. But if you touch them, they become aware of your presence. It's supposed to, oh, right, I don't set the, it increases their awareness of you. It doesn't escalate their threat level, so they don't instantly try and kill you. If they're already ready to kill you, then they will turn and pretty much instantly get you. So if you're trying to sneak past them and clip them from behind, then they'll just turn and slap you. It has like, you have like a 0.1 seconds or something to get through that window. I like the little animations that came with the texture set. But for anyone that wasn't here during our build phase, if we go into our post-processing and turn this off, I'm actually thinking about going the opposite direction, slowing the player down. Was my other thought. But this is what our actual tile set looks like. Because of the way the vision works and the shaders and stuff, everything outside of this boundary is hidden, so I don't even have tiles there. This is just the default background. But our post-processing is doing all the heavy lifting on making all this look 1-bit. But I actually rather like this tile set that I found. The characters in this view, the character models look kind of out of place. They actually fit surprisingly well in the 1-bit once everything is, you know, grayscaled and dithered. But I really like the textures for this sprite set that I found to do our walls and pillars and stuff. So I might actually keep that. But this is where we ended up. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with the technical things we were able to accomplish. The code for it, there's quite a bit. But we're in a pretty good overall state. We keep getting an error when we close out the window at certain times. I need to figure out what's going on there. I think this is a Linux thing, to be honest, because it doesn't happen on my Windows laptop. You can see I was working on trying to get vision cone shaders up and running without creation of additional objects. I did find a way to do that. Well, I think it'll work. What I want to try at some point is I want to try and put a point light with one-way, like drop a point light on one of the enemy models and then do one-way occlusion that's bound to the model. And so outside light could come in, but inside light on that layer can't go out, which would give me a vision area. And then I can increase a scale to increase the distance it goes and do 2 point lights like that on the same layer. We'll see. I don't want to work on this too much more. I don't think the idea was particularly enjoyable. It's fun running around like that, but it just didn't give me that stealth game vibe I was going for. And again, it was meant to be an experiment, so even if I want to do something, you know, a legit build on it, I would throw out most of this anyways. In particular, if we look at the enemy script, not the scene, the script, the state machine logic is pretty rough. I cleaned it up quite a bit for how we're doing tasks and stuff like that, but a lot of it ended up getting offloaded between initial setters, and then we've got a timer that does about half of it, and then we've got a when you get to location that handles about half of it and stuff like that. One of the things I learned during this is, I think, not in all cases, but in this case, I think it would make sense if I had taken all, like for example, the guard state, I'd taken all of this and I'd moved it into a node that can control or gets a reference to, it'd be our navigation agent, the physics process, so it'd be navigation agent, the sprite for flipping. Actually, we don't need this. We would need a reference to the top level enemy object. Our vision cone and our navigation agent, I think, is all we would need. And we would be able to do everything that we're doing in here but it would just be one node script that includes everything for guard. And then we just enable and disable that. And then in the logic in here, we just need to track how do we transition between the states, a lot of which would come from the guard, like the node itself as a callback. So we would just on ready register all of the states that are nodes in our object, and then, you know, when they fire an event saying to change, we change. So it allows our top level script to become a coordinator. Our top level node just houses all of our state nodes, and then each of these would have their own timers if they need them. They would do their own physics processing, stuff like that, and then they can just feed data back up. That would have reduced quite a bit of the interlinking complexity and helped a lot with debugging. I think a lot of the complexity in this is I went overboard with how we're doing enemy or player tracking, because we've got where's that, thresholds that we increment. And so while you're within certain vision areas or in certain alerts while in vision, and, you know, behind obstacles versus not behind obstacles, all that, we will increase your awareness level through the different stages over time. And so it gives this nice, you know, like, think stealth games like Skyrim, for example, where you've got the indicator in the middle of your screen saying how hidden you are and stuff like that. And as you're within like certain ranges or certain angles, it'll slowly start increasing. That's all of this coding was tied to that. And so specifically the transition between these was tied to that. All of this was built around that. The next thing I really needed to do was we have a static increment rate and we have a static threshold. I really needed to do what I did in some of these other areas where I create the threshold. I need to do an increment and a decrement threshold so I could tweak the rate at which they became aware of you in peripheral vision versus the rate at which they became aware of you in primary vision versus the rate at which they went from aware to hostile. So I could have it to be, you know, situations, because I can instantly trigger these in code. But right now, I think it's at 3 seconds. Yeah, 3 seconds. If you are standing in their peripheral vision for 3 seconds, they become alert. After 3 seconds, they'll transition from alert to aware. And after 3 seconds, they'll transition from aware to hostile. And so it just makes, it makes for a very slow, weird progression. It would have made a lot more sense to make this initial one, maybe leave that at, maybe even increase it to like 4 or 5 seconds. But when you enter their central, their primary vision, it instantly jumps to aware. And that could then change the aware to hostile to like 1 or 2 seconds. So if you're in the corner of their eye, it might take them a second to notice you. But if you're standing right in front of them, it only takes a second or two for them to be like, oh, this is an enemy kind of thing. And then the other problem I have is this threshold is used for incrementing and decrementing, which is great for when you walk into their peripheral. It starts ticking up, but doesn't quite go to the next level. And then you leave and it slowly starts falling off again. Great for that. Not as good when you want them to start chasing people. Because when they start chasing and they're in the hostile, right now, what I had to do was I paused the timer. So if they are actively moving, then the timer is stalled. So if you move out of their vision area, they will stop the alertness tick down timer, move to that area, and then start their search for you, and then it will start ticking down again. Because if I didn't do that, then 90% of the time the timer would tick down and they would go from hostile to aware down to alert before they even got to where they were going. And then they would just immediately, or at some point on the path, turn around and wander back to where they came from. So there's a bunch of tweaks we had to do to figure out alertness and how to handle that. I think for a game like this, having multiple layers of like primary versus peripheral vision doesn't make sense. Also, I think this alert threshold is fine. So if we collapse these drop the primary versus aware, leave it at maybe 3 seconds, or even maybe reduce it down to 2 seconds or something like that. Visualize it, and then essentially they don't know you're there. You're in their vision. They realize you're an enemy. Is kind of all we would have, and it would only take 2 or 3 seconds to transition between each of these. Or, well, unaware to alert would be instant. It would take 2 or 3 seconds to transition between alert and hostile, for example. I think that would be a lot better. And then introduce a fall off rate that is much higher. And so they will stay hostile instead of for 2 or 3 seconds for like 5 or 10 seconds, or maybe it doesn't fall off at all, kind of thing. I think that would really improve a game setup like this. That being said, as I built this and started playing, I came to the conclusion that this is 100% a puzzle game. Especially if we start adding the visualizing the cones of where they can see and stuff like that. This comes down to a game of figure out where the exit is, and then figure out how to get there without alerting all of your enemies. And that is a puzzle game, and puzzle games don't really mix well with procedural generation, which kind of cuts at the core concept that we're going for, which is why I'm not particularly interested in moving forward with this. Yeah. So that's kind of what we learned going through this. Lots of mechanical things that we can definitely use moving forward. Like I said, if I were to recreate what we did here, instead of it being about 5 days of consistent work, I feel like we could probably get the majority of this, if not all of what we needed to do in a more, especially if we'd go shoot for a more condensed version in like 2 days. Which is good, because that means in our next game jam, if we want anything to deal with enemy tracking or AI and stuff like that, we've done it now. And that gives us the opportunity to really scope in on the things we haven't done. And in particular, if we're recreating something similar, focus in on what this game lacked, which is content. It took us the majority of the five days we had available to us for coding to get to the point where it was playable. And mechanically speaking, it works great. There are a couple little edge cases that I'm still need to figure out from a bug standpoint, but overall, I think it's in a pretty good spot. It's just not particularly enjoyable, and I don't think there's anything we can do within the bounds of what it is, aside from turning it into a different genre and focusing on the puzzle aspects. And there's already games out there that do that, so I'm not particularly interested in following up on that. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Let me go ahead and close this stuff out. The other thing I was working on yesterday, after since we don't stream on Mondays anymore, after closing out the game jam and getting that submitted, the other thing I worked on there was I fought AWS for a little while on our Twitch bot. I now have port 3000 and 8008. I'm not sure why that's the default port for it. Welcome. Those two ports are now exposed from our AWS instance, which are the two ports that we're using for connecting to Twitch's WebSockets and the game's WebSockets. So those two are working. For some reason, even though I can forward ports through my, what do they call it? I'm blanking on what they call there's a tool I'm using in AWS that allows you to inject SSL certs. I have the certificate manager set up, so it will recreate our certs as needed. I have it linked to the name that I cannot remember of that tool. I have that tool then linked to our Squarespace for getting a domain name. And then I have that tool linked to our EC2 instance with our security group set up and everything. I know it's working because the domain points directly to Elastic IP. That's what it is. The domain points to our Elastic IP, our public Elastic IP registered through Elastic IP, which then uses the targets to map to EC2. I can send 3000 port requests to our domain, which goes to Elastic IP, which gets forwarded on that port to EC2 and connect. So I know Elastic IP is working, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be connecting. However, 443 is not working, which tells me something's going wrong with injecting the certs, but I'm getting a 502 bad gateway, which tells me it's not getting a response from our EC2 instance. When I do our health check, it says all ports, including 3000 and 8008, which are both working, by the way, are failing their health checks. So Elastic IP can't communicate with our EC2 instance, except it can communicate with our EC2 instance. I don't know what's going on. The not having 443, which is what we use for HTTPS, up and running is what's preventing us from finishing that off, because Twitch has to connect over HTTPS, which requires SSL certs, and I can't do that without getting port 443 exposed. So that's where we're at. Once we can get that up and running, which again is just me fiddling back and forth with AWS until it finally allows it to go through. That is what's preventing us from connecting to Twitch for our bot in cloud. Aside from that, everything seems to be working. Twitch is connecting whenever I try and connect on it over WebSockets. Unfortunately, because we are doing a cloud instance, I can't just leave it permanently connected over WebSockets. At the very minimum, tweaking numbers, I should in theory be able to reconnect every 7 days. But again, that's a bunch of constant running processes that we have to pay for. So I'd rather avoid that. Once the webhooks are up and running, which again is part of what's required for Twitch, then everything's good. And we should be able to use webhooks to establish a connection only when Twitch users come in and, registered Twitch users' channels go live, which is what the WebSocket will tell us, which will then establish our WebSocket for the duration that we have users in play, and then connect to their channel so that we can get the feed of messages. In theory, it should all work. I've tested it with the CLI. It's just a matter of connections are being refused, so we're not getting anything from Twitch. Today, we are going to be working on our game from the game side. So even though we can't send Twitch commands, we can send Discord commands, and the commands are coming from our Discord bot, which is also where the Twitch commands are going to come from. Which also means that all of our interface structure is available for us to fiddle around with, test, and do things with. So we have everything we need to keep working on the game from a game standpoint. And so that's what we're going to be doing on stream. While when I'm off stream and have time to work, I'm going to be fighting with AWS until I can get it to where we have access in AWS to Twitch. So that's kind of where we're at on that front. I'm sorry, I can't really do that on stream. A bunch of it's just referencing back and forth with docs, a lot of cursing, and exposing keys that if I don't rotate them immediately after, then we will get quite a bit of issues. So instead of doing that, getting my channel completely banned and also getting my bot taken down for security reasons, I'd rather just do that off stream. And then on stream, we can work on this. We are going to be using quite a bit of the learnings we did during our game jam to work on our RTS style game. One of those in particular is the AI. So I figured out how to do tile sets. I figured out a bunch of things on how to handle AI from a pathing standpoint and those kinds of things. So one of the things I want to do is I want to set up I want to change how we're doing the, what's the word I'm looking for? Tile layout, I guess we'll call it. I want to change our tile layout. All right, I need to set up a session. Give me 1 second. Moderation. I want to change our tile layout for a few different things. I think it'd be cool to change the images that we have for, here, I'm just gonna toss this up here for now. Oh, nope, I don't want full screen. Something like that will work. And if we move to keep above others. All right. One of the changes I'm thinking that would work really well with our system, that is something I learned from the AI side of thing, or dealing with our navigation mesh and AI, is if we go into our gather map, we got a sprite in here. If instead of doing just a sprite for, oh no, did we create it as an entity? Here we go, hub scene 2D. Oops. So I'm thinking, instead of doing this as player 1, player 2, we can draw this using tile maps, upload this into a tile set. We can add collision to everything but the door, start spawning instead of in the center. We can move the center down to the door, for example, and then spawn our AI, right in front of it. And then they would be forced to move around it using our nav meshes if this is a non-navigatable area. This gives us quite a bit of flexibility on how things move and make it a little more realistic. I think we would have to turn collision off on the other sprites for scale reasons. I am tempted to not do this though, for a couple reasons. One, the nav meshes I've been working with so far are 1 pixel wide cells, which means navigation is across the entire, every cell pixel you can see counts as a possible navigation point. Which the more cells you have, the more cells you have, the more computationally heavy the algorithm becomes. That's a bit of an issue. As we try and scale up with players coming in, when we're talking dozens or possibly even maybe into the hundreds, not gonna be an issue. If we have a large number of entities spawn in though, that could become quite the problem. And that's kind of what I'm worried about. I don't want it to come to a crawl as we try and scale up. The solution to that would be to use a grid system that uses, instead of 1 pixel wide, we do like 15 or 25 pixel wide cells, which will just drastically reduce the number of cells. And it's not going to solve our problem so much as reduce it. If we increase the cell size up to the cells we see visually here that we use for our reference points when Twitch commands are being sent, or I guess Discord commands are being sent, then we run into a different issue in that they are going to path, instead of a diagonal, they're going to ignore the collision we put on the castle or just not be able to move on our little hub. And then when they try and path like to cell 0, instead of a slight diagonal, they're just going to go diagonal to the first cell and then a straight line. And so it's not really going to provide us anything. And then we also have to worry about collision between our little guys, which could lead to problems, especially in our physics engine, because they're going to be trying to avoid each other. So I think we might need to save the AI for when we're dealing with our battle phase exclusively. We are going to need AI to control our auto battlers, though. All right. Where did we leave off? I believe we had... Oops. Let me get this back up there. I believe we were working on inventory. So let me send a game command real quick. Let's do cell 5. Oh, that reminds me. I was thinking about introducing a little bit of complexity. Oh, we're running ads now. Let me wait for that on Twitch first. Yeah, our inventory was established but broken, and then also we had an issue with it not being hidden. So we were introducing the game overlay. I believe that was what we were using for. Yeah, this is what we were doing to house our inventory. All right, so if we go to the game scene and we go to the script for this, we needed to game. Change map is where we handle transitions between the menus. So we can add game overlay visible false as we transition here, and then we can set a let's isolate it. So let's do a function reset, which is going to be inventory wood all right, so this should do our reset. Should probably clear this as well. It's part of our reset. So let's do and then we should take our phase timer. If phase timer not equal to null, then we want to do phase timer dot stop. That should be everything we need. I should do our cleanup. And then in our game script, we can set, let's call it when we transition back. So phase timer dot reset. That's not what we wanted. Game overlay dot reset. All right, so we'll hide it and we'll reset it every time we transition to the menu. I should fix that problem. And then also we're not getting updates to it. So let's look into that. Technically, our updates come from players, if I remember correctly. So when they act, they're idle, they can travel, they can gather, they can search, and then they can return home. Upon returning home, if they have a resource, so this is when they transition to attempting to return home. They will gather the resource, and then they will set their state to travel. This is what is called when they get home. And so if their resource is not empty, they will increment the value for a resource. Okay, so let's... Nope. Resource value, where both of these are called here. All right. Just as a reminder, today I need to leave a little early. I want to say we need to hit the road around 2:30 to 3, which means I'm probably getting the stream around 2, which is about 2 hours and some change from now. All right. Not only is both our entity as well as the enemy's entity are triggering this exact same logic, so we need to isolate the game overlay into both inventory for both players. I'll have to come back to that. So here in about 2 hours, I'm gonna have to leave. We need to head out of town for medical stuff for my fiance, and so we will be out of town tonight and all day tomorrow. And then Thursday, I will pick stream up again in the morning, though I am going to have to end it. I say Thursday. Today's Tuesday. So yeah, we'll be out Wednesday. And so Thursday, I also have an appointment in the afternoon. So we'll do a morning stream today. We'll do a morning stream Thursday, and then we'll be back to our normal schedule on Friday. And then this Saturday, I will probably do a full day stream as well, because our next, let me pull it up. Our next game jam starts Saturday. $8 a.m. local time. I am not going to start the stream at 8 a.m. local time. That's just not happening. We will start our stream at a normal, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. local time for me, which is our normal time. That will run. We will probably, fiance and kids are out of town this day. Well, this day. So I will probably run a full length stream, maybe even a little bit longer on Saturday. trying to figure out what we're doing for our game jam, get our theme aligned, and get a just kind of a strategy going forward. Even if I can't come to anything, like we're struggling again, like we did for this 1-bit, where I just could not come up with anything that the gameplay tied into the theme for, I will do the exact same thing I did for the 1-bit. I will pick something mechanically that sounds interesting for me to work on, that relates back to either something that I'm just interested in building or back to the Twitch game that we're building, and we will try and figure something out from there, and then hopefully we can align the theme afterwards. If not, at least we learned something useful. So I look forward to that Saturday. And so next week, we'll start our normal schedule Tuesday through Friday, 10 a.m. Central-ish, 10 to 11 a.m. Central, which would be 11 a.m. to noon East Coast and 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. starting time, Pacific time. And we will run it for our usual 6-ish hours. So yeah. Back to this. So we are getting the inventories being called. So that's not our problem. Really? I'm surprised this isn't throwing an error. Let's see if that's working. Is this not where... Oh, this is player, right? How are we supplying game overlay to player, or are we not? Inspector. Where's our player scene? Here we go. I remember what we're doing now. The reason that's not complaining is because that's referencing the singleton class reference. Well, let's do game overlay dot update inventory. How do I want to handle this? What I'm trying to think of is, how do I handle, in a perfect world, I guess we can just do positive, negative numbers. So we could do update inventory for player. I don't think this is gonna get confusing, because we started calling our player, like the Twitch chat player, that's the player object, but also we reference our Twitch streamer as player, which is what the session ID is associated with. What am I looking for here? We want to look at the... I'm pretty sure it's under game, to be honest. player 2. Call it P1. Player state gather. We don't store. We do have player.player, which stores if they're player 1 or player 2. So I guess we could do that. That would work. Which means if we go back here, we can do update inventory player. Which would be an int. Then it takes the resource, and then it takes the quantity. And then we'll just remove all that, and we will go to our game overlay. There it goes. Game overlay script, and we're going to inject a function here. This is our function. It's going to take a player int, a resource of RSS.types, and then a quantity of int. Start with a print to make sure we're getting this, which is going to take player, resource, and quantity. So we are going to inventory inventory.get resource default value, right? Yeah. So default's 0. And then we're going to add the quantity, which means we can do negative numbers. This does mean let's return a Boolean. So if, so we don't have that. If value plus quantity will be less than 0, return false. Okay, and then, so let's return false here. So this will reject. So if you're trying to take more resources than you have available, it will reject. We will update the value, and then we will set the new value onto the resource, and then we will return true. All right, let's see if that'll do update. All right. We still need to fix quite a few things on the visuals front too. It's updating our inventory correctly, but it's not updating the render message. No. Spawn timer, gather timer, sprite. Nope, that's the... Where's game overlay? Here's game overlay. We're not updating our labels anywhere, are we? We got a reset function. We got a render function. Process should be updating these. Process doesn't seem like the right spot for this. Process definitely doesn't seem like the right spot for this. So, well, it does seem like the right spot for this. But would label. Maybe we just, every time we update or reset. So when we do reset, we will update all of these. And then when we perform a update here, we can match on resource. And if the RSS.types wood we can do the wood label. We can make a string of value. Types dot food. String of value. And RSS dot types dot gold. Here we go. Let's try that. It is text, okay. I think I just gathered from an empty. No. 2, 2, 1. So 0, 1, 2. So it should have been wood. I'm pretty sure I hit cell 3. I wonder if it's completely rendered off screen. Try again. Let's go to cell 2. I bet that was an empty one, and okay, so 1, 3, 1, and then that one's not returning anything because it was empty. Got it. Either way, we're not getting any updates to our label. Let's close that out. Let's see what's going on. If I run this and connect to the session and go 2D label, if I change this to 1, 2, 3, oops, I don't want to line wrap. I also don't want that. Okay. So I can in fact update it. In fact, I know it's text because that's where this 0 is coming from. So then why game overlay? Label. So why then are you it gave me a response of 131. So this quantity should have been a 3. Even if this, or sorry, it should have been a 1. Even if this was a 0, it's not like it would Boolean it out and cleanse it or anything like that. So it would still be getting a 0 like we're getting elsewhere. Maybe I should just double check. Print value. Just to be safe that it's actually setting something. Let's do cell 1 this time. We know that has something. I need to remove empty cells from our randomizer. Value 1. So we know our inventory is being updated. Our value, so we have a value being set. Here, let me go ahead and keep above others. We know for a fact our inventory is being updated for a given player. We're not using player in here yet, which we need to do. I need to segment this inventory into 2. But we know for a fact the value is being updated, so we need to figure out why the label's not updating after it's done the first time. Does this have any? So if I grab label, I know how to test this. I don't know why this would be the problem, but I know how to test it. So we will just remove this. See, I mean, this one's updating just fine. So it's wild to me that these would, are they like disabled or something? That'd be grayed out if they were disabled. And they're not doing anything weird like disabling, pausing processing or anything like that in their settings. Because if that was the case, it would be the first time too. And this also includes our timer label, which is actively ticking down right now. So if one of these was paused, the other ones would be paused as well. So it can't be that. I mean, we'll test it. I commented these out to test and see if it is tied to our initial update. So what I want to test is if I do this, which is cell 1, will it apply? Thanks for joining. Let's see. So it's set gold. Will this one set wood? Set wood. Initial values are being set. So if I send again, all right, ads are running. I'm going to leave this up and I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. So let me just do that and I'll be right back.
Got more than a couple of people going mad, I swear they're rooting hard. Till I might be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast, didn't even get a glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We on, hating because you want, shining like it's neon, rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy, I stand out so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy, I stand out so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shooting, yeah, shooting, yeah, shooting, yeah, shooting shots. Didn't even get to cross. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
And we're back. Sorry about that. Took me just a tad longer than I expected. All right. Well, we're getting increments now. We got gold too. Let's run it again. I wonder why the initial setting in reset is causing issues. Because we can also... I guess I can... Yeah, it's up to gold 3. I think this was getting wood, which would bring this up to wood 2. I wonder why setting it this way is fine, but setting it this way is locking it. Okay. Well, if that's the case... Let's just... Let's see if setting it to 0 as a string will do it. So this should get us some food. And it looks like an empty cell. So food. I think it's putting a 1 behind the 0. That makes no sense to me. Well, let's run it again and see if it changes. So this should bring food up to 3. Yeah, it's definitely setting a value behind the 0. This is identical. So why is the 0 stuck there on first render? So if I comment out these, is it when reset is called? Because we call it in the game script, we call reset. What if we call it right here? This should get us wood. I'm wondering if it's tied to it not being visible. No. Also, calling it here caused our timer to stop working. That's wild. I guess I guess I could see or understand if it was tied to like a default value, it wouldn't be good, but what I mean by that is like if I set it here, like if this was causing an issue, I could understand. But this, also the fact that changing this from when the map triggers being our start to here being the reset is also crazy to me. All does is stop the timer. That's why. If we're going to do the reset here, we need to set visible. Then reset, then start our timer. Okay. That should fix that one at least. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Cell 2 has wood in it. Do it again. Nope. Game overlay. It's got to be something to do with this being a 0 value, maybe. Like it has to be a timing issue. Okay, so this is addressed now. So this one, when we call the reset, is addressed. So let's set the game overlay. Close that out. Let's remove our default value that we added. Like I said, I understand. It doesn't make sense, but I can understand why that one would cause issues. That exact issue. All right, this should get us some gold, and looks like an empty cell that he's going for. Yeah. Once again, I changed when this was being called, so it's definitely visible. The only other thing I can think to do is layer 1 RSS types food increment value of 0. This would be wood. This would be gold. I wonder if our label down here is having the same issue. All right. Should be food and gold. What if I clear it first? The only thing I can think that's going on here, and I don't know why it would be this way, but the only thing I can think that's going on is that they have an internal check that's checking for a truthy value, and string 0 is returning falsy somehow. And so they're just re-rendering over the top of it. Nope. It's only with 0. Because if I default all these to 1, Let's see if that does anything. I know if I start it as an empty string, it works fine. Nothing changed? Oh, yeah, it just rendered a 1 behind a 1. This is a 2 now. It's the default value problem. Do I have any weird settings going on in here? Let's see. Godot label holds original value. It's saying what I need to do is directly access the label's text value is the most likely problem, but this is direct access. Wait, does this have a set text? Gold right now. Set text. No. Good figure. AI hallucinating a function. All nodes in your scene are accessing the same instance of the auto load. Create local copies or access different instances of a shared resource. Ooh. I am in fact using singletons here. That would explain it if we're getting a different reference to that. Okay, so if that's our problem, which makes sense, then that would be tied to timer label, bflow, wood label. Can I do this? Dot text equals. Is that a thing I can do? Text in base string. No, I didn't think so. Within here, it shouldn't be a problem because this is the class definition for it. I get the feeling our problem is that, yeah, we have 2 references to game overlay. Let's hide that. That would explain it. Made no update. Okay. So I think we need to... So if I look at the local on this, let's do keep others. If I toggle visibility. So this is our remote instance for it. This is our local instance for it. So if we set default values and set zeros through here, and we should be able to remove these lines. All right, let's call that. All right, let's see if this works. This should update our inventory. Still doing the same thing. So if I look at the remote, yeah, see, we have if we look at our local reference, it's hidden. If we look at our remote reference coming from the root, then it's shown. If we hide it, it goes away. So the only thing I can think to do is delete that from there. Let's restart. Yeah. Game overlay. Let's try that again. All right, that's a good sign. Let's run our Discord command. Gather from cell 2. Hey, there's one. This guy's on an empty cell, so he's not going to get anything anyways. Let's do cell 1 now. Perfect. All right. We fixed that. Now let's decouple our... I'm going to leave this open so you guys can interface with it if you want. Keep above others. Let's decouple the inventories from the two sides. So I need to change game overlay. We need to... This... let's do it down here. Expand that up. We'll change the end. There we go. All right, so we're going to do P1 inventory, P2 inventory, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to figure out a better way to render these that does not take up screen space, I think. I don't know, we'll figure something out. All right, let's save that. And then we have, you know what I should do is I should pop that over there. Give me just a second. Is this still working? Is it locked in? Let me just refine this region just a little bit. There we go. Save that. There we go. All right. I don't have to keep fighting with it. But you guys can still see it, which should solve some problems there. Okay, so if we do... Let's go to the script for the game overlay. I should be able to just nest this. So we can call it P1. And P2. And then we'll do this. Do I need to wrap these in quotes or something? I do need to wrap these in quotes. And then we can do, actually, we should just do these as player 1, player 2. Now, player can be either 1 or 2. So we need to do a check here initially. That's going to be if not inventory.get player return false. All right, and then everywhere that we do inventory, oops. Everywhere that we do inventory, I need to use the alt reference instead. .get player. We can remove that. And then here, if player equals 1, I wonder, can I do this as for a node reference? So let's do wood label. Player 1, player 2. All right. Would if player equals 1, else this wood label. Wrap it in that and then do. Does that work? Does. Let's collapse that down. Perfect. All right. Let's just do, let's grab this whole block and we'll just do paste and paste. And then in this case, we want food instead of wood. And then in this case, we want gold instead of wood. All right, and then down here, this is a reset function, so we can actually just define inventory equals 1. I think I actually need brackets and all. And then this is 2. 1 and 2. Bruh, does GD script also require you to set local variable to access the transform? Like you can directly change vector 2 for it. I'm not quite sure what you mean by the transform here. I think we want to still call these. We just want to pass. Oh, I can't do that. There 2. Because I'm using these to trigger. Reset. All right, we should have dual inventories now. Pop that back up in the corner. I completely forgot about that bug. I need to do that and then resize. Riven main, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Alright, this should update player inventory 1, gold 1. Alright, this should update player 2's inventory with wood. Wood 1. Alright, that looks good. Let's grab cell 5. And this looks like it's going to cell 17. I think cell 17 is empty. I think this one is one of the outlier ones we were talking about. I think it hit the exact edge. Yeah, that one's empty. This one went to up, though. Okay, so player inventories seem to be working now. Let's get rid of the our random generator generating empty nodes into our cells. So we need to go to cell script. We still need to handle the different harvesting functions. I think we use resource. Here's resource. All right, types. Gather, randomize resource. Here we go. Let's change this from 1 to, nope. Resource type. I wonder if there's, let me check this real quick. So you're wanting to modify the X and Y values of a positional vector. Yeah, in your case, what you're probably wanting to do, let me find, I guess it doesn't really matter if I'm in a, so you would have something like process. I don't know. What you have now is you're getting your H and Y, and so you're what I would do here, so I can't access directly. I need it to store it in position first and then give it back from position. Yeah, so you have position exists on our elements. Let's assume that we're modifying our position. Effectively, what you're doing is var position equals position. Then you do some sort of transform data on it. So position.x equals, in your case, plus equals h times delta. Y times delta, where your h and y are coming from, well, it's just 1.0 and float. This should be v, not y. Oh, right. These should be underscore. All right. So you're getting your horizontal and vertical based on that. So this is effectively what you're doing, and then you're reassigning position back. This is more or less the code that you sent me. I'm just doing it in a process function with delta being passed in. The way I would condense this down is you're multiplying by delta. So the first thing I would do is I would just say direction equals vector 2 of your horizontal and vertical, so x then y. Then you can multiply this by delta, and this will multiply both values in here and then return a vector with this multiplication. So this and this is being combined in this one line, and that allows you to get rid of, in your case, instead of doing 1.0 here, you do input.getAccess. Also, I'm not sure, I haven't used getAccess, so I'm not sure about that one, but the rest of this would hold true. And then you can do position plus equals direction. Technically, this isn't direction. This is direction. This is actually velocity. I'm not using velocity for a reason. I mean, I guess you could call it underscore velocity. Underscore velocity. You can then do a collapse on this slightly further and do that. That would work. And you can actually collapse this even further and remove the setter here. So that would be the exact same as what we wrote before. Pass it to a variable, change it, and then give it back. I again, if you're wanting to update the position, then kind of. This needs to create something that you can mutate on, but you can do the vector math this way. That should simplify it a little bit. Should, yeah. I don't see why it wouldn't. It's pretty common to do things like this. Again, how they handle it might be slightly different. That might be a well, no, it's not a read only because you're assigning position to it, so you know you can access it. I would collapse it down this way and just give it a try. Also, I can't say for certain because I don't know what game engine you're using. I have used very little Unity. I will point out though, in Godot, if you're using, and I assume Unity has something similar, if you're using move and slide to trigger your physics processes. Again, this wouldn't be process, this would be the physics process. So function under, I would need to add a physics body to get that done. But if you're using move and slide, you can actually do velocity instead of position. And again, this requires a physics body in Godot. So you can actually set this directly to what you want your velocity to be, which is direction times speed times delta. Actually, in velocity's case, you don't need delta. It handles delta behind the scenes for you. So you can set your velocity equal to this. This is what I was doing in my other one. Actually, I can show you. Can I open 2 instances of Godot? I can. One bit. I assume this is something you can do in Unity as well. But if I go to my... Yeah, here we go. So I'm lerping on these. So there's extra stuff going on because I need acceleration, deacceleration, and a bunch of other things that are independent on these. But I'm setting velocities X and velocities Y and then clamping it. And then when I call move and slide, it applies my velocity in, and you can see this a little bit better because if I go to my enemies script, I have a function listener down here tied to my navigation. All this does is when this returns a safe velocity, which is the velocity required to move it around an obstacle in its way, it sets velocity equal to safe velocity. This is not in my process. This is just whenever this fires a new safe velocity. In my physics process, I don't set velocity in here anywhere. In a normal navigation, I will zero it out to make sure things stop when I'm not navigating. But if I'm navigating, I don't actually set velocity. I set the agent's velocity based on direction and speed, and then it will internally handle calculating the safe velocity. And so all I have to call is move and slide, and it will take this velocity no matter when or where I set it on this object and apply it to my instance to get my instance to move. Now, I know for a fact this is not what's the word I'm looking for? Instant process. This is going to be an asynchronous task. But this should be quite quick. And I know this is on a tick rate based on 144 hertz. The odds of these two going out of sync they will never go out of sync more than 1 frame, which means I might have a situation where I apply a velocity that is 1 frame delayed. But as long as my frame rate is maintaining 60 hertz, so, or above, then that's fine. Also, this is my AI, not my player, so I don't really particularly care. On a player model where you want it to be much quicker and much snappier, you probably want to do this calculation. First off, player model, you should be doing this. This is for the AI's navigational mesh. So calculating your velocity and applying it should exist within your physics process, or be happening instantly, and the next physics process tick will always get it. This is always 1 frame behind on applying my velocity, because I apply velocity here based on the navigation agent. Realistically, I should probably be handling this differently on how I'm applying this velocity, but this was my first pass at it, and it's working, so I didn't feel the need to update it. But I would go something more along the lines of this, where you're just applying, ignore the lerping. You can do direct access to the velocity, but something along these lines where you're applying your velocity and stuff and then clamping it. That's what I would recommend. But I don't see why you wouldn't be able to directly modify position inline. Like, you should be able to do just plus equals. The easiest way to do that would be just multiply it by a scalar or something like that. If there's a velocity, use the velocity and that will handle it. But if you're not having a physics body, there's definitely not going to be a velocity. You can just set, instead of H and Y, set static values so it always moves in a given direction. like I did with the vector, like I did here. Just do position equals that times delta. Just run this inline as a single line. It will always be moving in this direction at a constant speed. But it will let you know if you can inline assign this, and then the rest of it's just figuring out how to get everything nice. They might have something in there, like I mentioned before, velocity. In Godot, if you set velocity and you call move and slide, velocity gets applied. Even though I'm not changing this anywhere. If I were to set velocity as a constant up at the top on this variable and then call move and slide, a character would be moving constantly in Godot. So speed might be a reserved word that is guaranteed to apply something in a specific way. I don't know enough about Unity to say whether it is or not. Yeah, it's completely possible. I don't know. That would be my guess if it's being applied regardless of you interfacing with it. That seems the most likely to me. All right, but we have gathering set up and inventories on both sides now. What is our next issue? I want to fix we were in the middle of looking at the resource to make sure that we only apply. I want to use pick random, but I want to avoid. It would be nice to just use pick random, but I want to avoid empty. This is why variance would be nice, is because I can do this. I can do it a random range, for example, which is what I do down here and stuff like that. The problem is this becomes a lot more complex. So if this was nullable, I could just remove empty and assign the value to null. And then this would work as is in line. And I just need to do a null check and I can determine whether it's empty or not. Instead, I get to do resource type equals types on rand int within range of. We're gonna just do 1 and assume empty is always 0. And types dot values dot length, nope, dot size -1. Only string or string name can be used for index for type resource.types. It's new. I've done this before. It's the size. Got it. Yeah, I mean, it would be weird if it was auto-applying, you know what I mean? So you should be multiplying by speed. That's pretty standard. All right, I usually use this as a key. So I guess instead what we need to do is create an array of all the values minus the first one. Types dot values dot top front, which is the return the array or the returns the item. So I need to store this var types. Underscore types dot pop front to remove the first entry, which is empty for us. I'm going to remove this because I don't need that anymore. And then we can do resource type equals types dot pick random. Not declared in current resource types. Oh, that's plural. Needs to be singular. It should do the same, but remove our outlier. We should no longer have empty cells anywhere. Pop this back up here. Again, we need to fix our positional information, but I don't see any empty cells. That's good. Yeah, we talked about that for a little bit earlier today. So for the 1-bit, I wouldn't call it a fun game. It is severely lacking in content, but we learned a lot, which was kind of the goal of it. Because we created shaders for the first time. We created, and I'm pretty happy with those shaders, to be honest. We created I'll just show you. We got vision cones up and running and working and stuff like that. So if I run this, oh, right. Let me re-enable that. Game post-processing. So this is what we created. The 1-bit, we've got a grayscale shader combined with a dithering. We've got player controller for sprinting, walking, and then we've got sneaking. We've got AI in place for pathfinding. He's very buggy right now. We literally just ran this and having issues. I don't think it changed anything. Yeah, if we touch them, we got death animations, we got player animations. Can't see vision cones. I couldn't get that up and running. We've got shadows, we've got fog of war. No, I just grabbed a sprite set for it. It'll do perform searching, which is hard to see without the vision cones up. They have set guard locations. They can do patrols. They will increment threat and alertness levels to deem whether or not they should just be monitoring, chasing, attacking, so on and so forth. Yeah, so the AI is pretty well fleshed out. A little bit buggy on certain scenarios. But we did get the AI is in a pretty solid state. It's overly complex for what we wanted in the situation, or what made sense in the situation. But it's a more fleshed out stealth. If I were to do this again, I would remove about half of what the state machine does for our enemy AI and make it just, if they see you, they start chasing you. If they touch you, they kill you, kind of thing. A much more simplistic version of that. Hang on, let me ban a bot. All right. All the tiles and everything have, so the tile set itself has collision and the AI pathing encoded into it. So while I didn't get to doing procedural generation of the maps, I can fetch tiles and it has everything needed to procedurally generate them. And have all of this same functionality working. So I didn't get a chance to actually do it, but it should work. We can transition to the next stage. There's no menus for it, no sound or anything like that. If you touch, they will kill you. instantly, regardless of their threat levels. What do you mean? What? So I have this a vision thing. If you're talking about the shadow coming off this, that's intentional. It's to give the blocking of vision as you go around things. So if we were to put walls in place, you can't see over walls. This is a pillar, so you can't see past the pillar. I probably need to bring the vision on this down slightly. The intention was because it's that 2.5D, like not quite directly above graphics. So I was trying to do the vision models off the top. So it looks a little wonky. I probably should have brought it down so it's trimming the top of this pillar a little bit. AI cannot see through, so this gives you a way to like peer around walls and see what the AI is doing. Since I'm not showing vision cones, it helps a little bit. I wanted to show enemy vision cones, and I thought of a way to do that, but I didn't get a chance to do it. But I figured out a way I might be able to do vision cones. Again, showing it in 1-bit's going to be kind of hard because our vision circle around our player shows the 100% of the range of our vision, our color range. White, light dots, heavy dots, black. That's it. So not great in 1-bit. If we turn off post-processing and we turn on our debug mode and show collision shapes, you can see kind of an idea of what the cones would look like in a more standard setting. And you can also see oh, that's a weird one. If you outrun their vision, it gets a little wonky at the edges. I also restricted turn rates. The AI for pathing will randomly jerk them away. I'm not sure why. It's part of you see that? That's just how the A-star algorithm is calculating pathing. Pong's not a bad one for a first game. I did tic-tac-toe as my first one in C++. See, the vision wants to move them away and then jerks them back, and I don't know why it's doing that. That's just the pathing algorithm. You can actually see it. If I turn on... So if I go to my enemy... Entities. Enemy. If I go down to my navigation agent... and turn on debug. So path around the corner, you can see the little line. That's the path it's going to try and follow. If I pop out here, do you see that one where it just randomly shot all the way off to the side? That one again. I'm not sure why, like, it'll just suddenly decide that it wants to suddenly path backwards. That one's a weird one. So there's some bugs that I need to work out. Some of them are things I can change, like that. I'm pretty sure that one was picking up a old path. I'm not sure why. So I don't know how to fix that. But like that right there, where it didn't update again until it hit the end, that's something I can fix. I'm not sure why it's intermittent like that. It should be updating player position this entire time like it is now. That one lost vision of me. That's why it stopped. And it's going to the last known location. And then it's supposed to, there it goes, it rotates, and so it does a little search of the area. When vision cones aren't enabled, you can't tell it's doing a little search of the area. Yeah, I know. The worst part is so if I go over here, I can say, look, you see that? It just randomly decided that it was going to path me completely different. I'm staying completely still, not moving. Like, I've had it, it's better now, way better now than it was. Like that. There was a time where I could stand completely still and the A-star algorithm would path like this, and then it would suddenly try and go to the same point, but instead of running that straight line that it did, it would, like, assuming it was there, it would try and path all the way over here and then back to the endpoint that it's at now. And I got that to stop when I removed the tiles underneath this. No, this is the built-in A-star algorithm. The only parts I'm doing is this took me like 2 full days to get the AI working in the state it's in now. Part of this, at least some of what I know is buggy right now, is how I'm handling my state machine on transitioning, because I'm trying to do like player, it can tell when it has vision of you and when it doesn't. And so when you transition out of vision, it will try and transition over to using the alertness model combined with timers to degrade its threat level. And then it'll update, when it transitions out, it'll update the last known position. And now it's trying to navigate to the last known position instead of your current position. So it gives that semblance of it doesn't know where you are at all times, even though you might still be within its, you know, it can track you no matter what, anywhere you are. And so I wanted to give that, when you leave its vision, it moves to where it last saw you, not to where you currently are, even though it can't see you. I know part of it's tied to that, and part of it's tied to, like, I've got this task timer that's going down here, and so task timer timeout. In here, it will update. So if it's in the chase, it knows where you are and it can see you, is what this case is. And so it's trying to move to your current position. And so if you moved, this timer is like a 0.25 second timer. And so every 0.25 seconds, it'll check to see if your current position is equal to the navigation agent. So this is it trying to go where you are now? If so, then, oh, this is part of it. Right, not equal. So if it's not trying to go where you are, then it'll update that. I need to, this is part of the problem here. This should have an else if. So this is there a player being tracked and the player's position is currently the navigation agent's target? So we have a player, but they're trying to go elsewhere. Update to the new location. There should be an else if in here that we have a player, but we are actively on the way to the player already, in which case it does nothing. And then the third case should be no player, in which case seek. So I need an else if, and that would fix one of the bugs in here. Then we have like positional updates on, you know, how far off are you and different things like that to do some corrections. Are you currently moving? If show the walk animation, stuff like that. I just want to ask you a cool question. Now, after 3 months of JavaScript, I feel I have developed good knowledge for it. So now doing C#, how do you make it that you don't mix up the language or forget stuff in JavaScript? The only way to prevent forgetting things is to do it regularly. So some things are, the more you do something, the more it sticks with you and the longer it'll stick with you for. But you're always going to have that problem of if you stop doing something. So in this case, coding JavaScript, the longer you stop, the more you're going to forget. And some things will come back easier than others. Some things won't. So like this project we're working on merges those two for me. My bot is written in TypeScript. So I am doing some TypeScript net programming and fighting AWS and things that I don't normally do while doing game dev. And then GDScript and Godot. And so I'm doing both at the same time, which it gets me switching back and forth in context, but neither of those are touching the full spectrum of what either can do. So you're going to forget those. When it comes to swapping between languages, there isn't really a good way to not mix them up. It's just going to be a practice thing. You just have to get a good understanding. The more languages you learn and the more you spend context switching between languages, the better you'll get at this. But it's going to be one of those things of like, I'm working in GDScript, and you'll see me do this occasionally where I'll attempt to do something and I'll be like, oh, that's not how we do it here. The most common for me is still else if. That doesn't exist in Godot. You need to do the elif. This is how you do an else if in Godot, or well, in GDScript in particular. That still screws with me. Like you're just going to see that, and you're going to run into it. You just need to be able to. That's where IDEs with stuff comes into play, and so it's going to just prompt you and remind you, like, hey, this isn't a thing that exists. It's a bit of a struggle. The more you do it, and the more breadth you have on doing that, the better you'll get about being like, okay, I'm working in this context. This is where it makes sense to do X, kind of things. But it's just one of those things that comes with practice more than anything. There's no good answer, unfortunately. Sorry, but it's just one of the side effects of working in different languages, All right. So close this out. I need to go to the bathroom real quick. I missed our ad segment. Since I'm going to be away from the computer anyways, I am going to go ahead and trigger the next one, though, just so we can postpone the following. But I will be right back. All right, we are back. All right, just as a reminder, I do need to end my stream here in about 20 to 30 minutes or so. So we don't have too much longer. It does look like our exclusion of empty tiles is working. So we should no longer have that problem. Let's try and fit our resources within our cells a little bit better, which is this position right here. So we do a random range within the full cell size on width and height. This is a relative range, which is why we do 0 to width. We need to set the exclusion bounds based on the size of the chosen resource. Nope, not quantity, resource. Also, I want to test quantity. Let's do a... Nope. Let's duplicate that, comment that out. Let's do a 1 to 2 range so we can test that a little bit better. We'll come back to that in a second. I need to know positional data based on this. So let's set the position last. So we can get the parent cell. We can get types. So this will set our type, which is what we're using here. This will update our quantity. So then down here, we need to set our position. All of these cases, we're going to do more or less the same. So maybe we make a function that's here of set position. We need to provide the resource type. No. We need to provide the cell, which is a node 2D. Technically, it's just a node. And we need to provide the width as an integer and the... No, this is a float, if I remember correctly. And the height as a float. Let's have it return back a vector 2. And we can take this. And we can return that. And then we should be able to call, let's call this calc position. So we can calculate the position on all of these, where we just need to provide the cell, and then we need to provide the food dot width and food dot height. Let's condense this down, which is, so we got the cell as a node, and then we'll do resource as a node. So let's do food there. Oops. Gold goes to gold, and wood goes to wood. And then in here, we can take, let's do var width equals resource.width over 2. And we can do width to cell.width minus width. And then we can do var height equals resource.height over 2.0. And then we can do the same here. Height minus height. There we go. That should bound it within our container. What am I getting wrong? Width doesn't exactly exist on it. Okay, let me look up GD script get calculated width of a node. Of a sprite 2D. Most reliable way to get the width of a sprite 2D, which accounts for its scale, is to use the getRect method and access its size. Okay. What are these? Sprite 2D. So if I change this to use a sprite 2D, Then here we can call get rect dot size, and this would be X and this would be Y. Let's try that. Always centered. That's not good. What all exists under size? Surprised that W or something doesn't exist. Let's just print resource.getRect. I am seeing some variability. Not as much as I was expecting, though. I mean, like these sheep in particular are what are throwing me off, you know what I mean? Because they're not very large. Like this cell down here, 64 by 64. This one's 64 by 64, so that's the entire size. Ooh. Let's pop that up here in the corner so you guys can see it a little bit better. If we look at food sprite, yeah, this is 64, 64 is what roughly this should be. What is the size of our cell? Cell, get parent. A cell is coming in as here, let's go this way. If I do a resource, instead of randomizing this, let's always put it in the top left corner, which would mean, oh, let me just go ahead and duplicate. Nope. Duplicate the line, comment that out. Let's remove randomization. They should just be in the top left corner every time now. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't seem like the top right corner to me. Or sorry, top left, not top right. This is the food sprite, yeah. I wonder if we switch to using, if we just do, well, first of all, let me get rid of that. What if we do this? Nope, I can't do it on the resource, can I? Nope. All right. It feels like it's setting the top left corner based on the cell size to me. And it's setting the position based on the top left corner of the resource itself and the cell. That's how it feels. I wonder if the cell scaling is failing to come into play. Because this is providing height and width and it scales it to fit. Because these are the scaled values that we're getting. So if I set this to 0, 0. Top left corner centered. Interesting. I need to get the sizing. Our problem is getting the dimensions, the scaled dimensions of our image within the context of the cell is what we're running into. This should be getting me our scaled dimensions. Our cells honestly shouldn't be setting scaled. They set their width and height, but it's not actually triggering scaling or rotation in any way, so that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, one thing we can do to help mitigate this is we can go into our resource and we can set the, if we make these visible, we can set their positional data like so. But then this is our node resource point. So I like this, to be honest. It just requires us to do a little bit more computation here. Our problem is still the fact that getting our sprite data is the problem. Let's print cell size, cell dot width, cell dot height. Then let's print sprite size, rss.get rect dot size. Last cell's a tree. So the cell size is 132, 132, but the tree size is 192, 192. Supposedly. Doesn't seem right though. Maybe this is our last one. That makes a lot more sense for the tree. I'm pretty sure this should be our mine. Interesting. So there's definitely some sort of scaling going on. So if we go to cell, line 2D, no. Where's the cell script? Is this where we apply the resource? Resource refresh. Instantiate sets the position. I just realized resource dot position, width and height. Scene instantiate, and then inside of resource, we randomize the resource and attempts to calculate its position within the bounds of its container. So we don't actually care about the parent here, we care about self. So instead of using this, let's do we don't have a bounding rectangle for a standard node. We're double randomizing, this is the problem. Okay. So our resource is being scaled. So can we print self dot scale? Is that a thing we can get? It is not being scaled in any way. Position equals random position. Add resource as a child, make it visible. Let's set this. I need to rework this. I don't know why I'm handling it that way. We managed to get double resource here and here. A few of these have double resources. Interesting. Oh, they don't have double resources. I'm willing to bet yep. I fixed that. I forgot to hide one of those. There we go. All right. It's always top left corner. Size isn't being addressed though. What I want to know is if we look at our, this should be a tree. So this should be a tree. Let's go to gold. $192 by $128. $192, $128. This is the raw size. The scaled size is going to be half that, or less than half that. So if we set this to, let's get rid of that line. Let's get the rectangle. $192, $128. This is what we actually want. This is our size. So we need to figure out what this P is on it. Is that global position? Nah, because it would be less consistent then. So I need to know what values exist on here. Size and position. I mean, position, that actually makes sense on position because this would be the center. This would be the top left corner versus the center of it, so it would be half. What happens if we call get area? As it actually calculates the area, it doesn't return it as a sizing vector. So this get rect is actually giving us the full size rectangle, not the scaled one. So what we need to do is take this and then multiply it by resource.scale. Transform.scale. Cannot find member scale in base transform 2D. I mean, trans rect to and oh, we want dot size. So let's see if that will get us the correct scaled value. It is much better. Okay. So if we take this, we can now get var rect equals that. And then we can do, oh, we'll call it underscore size. Underscore size X and underscore size Y. Let's comment this line out and uncomment this. A little bit more variability. It still doesn't quite, there's too many that are look too close to center, you know what I mean? I mean, maybe I just need to run the randomizer a little bit. I would expect some of these to get closer to the edge. Let's set the, let's do our test, return vector to width height, which should get us, yeah, assuming it runs off the center point, this should get us offset correctly in the exact top left corner. Those look top left corner-y to me. And then if we do the bottom right, it should be this. Oops. And this. That looks, that's off. The rest of these, and that one's a little, it looks like it's coming in. Is it based on the sprite size? I mean, it should be based off the sprite size. So this is 192, 128. So that looks good. If we switch to food sprite and look at the, what are we looking at? This is the texture expanded. So if we expand the texture, yeah, it's should be 128, 128, but that gives quite a bit of space around it. What if we edit the region on this and do a separation of, so 64, 64 would cut this down to the center. Let's try it. It's offset by 32. 32. Do they fully fit within? It looks good, yeah. Our sheep are much closer to the corner now. That is so much better. And let's do the same for trees. Wood. Region, edit region. Should be something like offset step separation. So let's step in 128. That looks wide enough. And then offset of 256. Start with a 0, 0. And 28. Maybe 172? No. Technically 160, so 176 would be the which is not, that might actually be correct on that one, and then we could do a separation. But the next step up would be 192. That might be the one. And then we could do starter tree. Close. So that would fix our tree. So if we refresh and reconnect. Much better. Okay. Now let's re-enable our centering logic. Restart. Reconnect. There we go. Now we got some variability. That looks a lot better. All right. We still need to handle how our gatherers do their thing. We are out of time for today, though. I need to go get ready and we need to hit the road. So, just a quick reminder. Next stream will be Thursday morning. Normal time. We will end 2.5 to 3 hours early-ish. So, expect about a half-day stream on Thursday in the morning. About around this time, a little bit before this, 30 minutes to an hour before now on Thursday is when we'll be ending. No stream tomorrow. We will have a normal stream on Friday, and then we will have a bonus stream on Saturday. So that'll be Friday, Saturday, and then a half day today and a half day Thursday. So we'll do 4 days of streaming, which is our normal, but it'll be 2 half days and 2 full days instead of 4 full days. Thursday, or not Thursday, Saturday is when we'll start the new game jam. So look forward to that for anybody that wants to help out on planning and picking our next project. Pretty much as soon as we start the stream, the theme should already be announced. If it's something we really jive with, then it'll be quick. If not, then we'll be iterating for a little while. I will, by end of stream, or on Saturday, we will have a direction. I'm not going to delay it 2 days or 3 days or something like that. That screws us over too much. Worst case scenario, we will figure out a mechanical system that sounds fun to build that is flexible enough that we can fit it into the theme if we can't find a way to align the theme correctly. And then we'll work backwards from there, kind of like we did for the 1-bit. But yeah, thanks for joining me. Like I said, Saturday, we'll start the next game jam. We'll be back Thursday morning, and then we'll stream all day Friday as well. But thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys then. Let's go ahead and trigger a raid. Let's see who's online. Sure. We like Hypnotic games. All right, we're gonna start right there. They are just now starting the stream. Let's chill and hang out for a bit. I, of course, am not going to be able to hang out for very long because I need to immediately go and get ready and then hit the road. But again, thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys day after tomorrow.